Hey, what's up, everyone? My name's Zack Olinger. In this podcast series, I talk about relationships. Now, I know, as a man, you may not want to talk about relationships, or you may even tell me that the relationship that you're in is already pretty good. But I'm going to invite you to consider this. Could you be a little bit more fulfilled in the relationship that you have? I would like to have you consider that there may be other ways to kind of see the conflicts that are truly just unnecessary that we all experience in a different light. And if you're open to receiving or just giving me a little bit of your time, then I look forward to my guests and I inspiring you to become a man that can have more freedom, less conflict, and more pleasure in their relationships. Thanks for joining me.
Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me on another episode of the Real Zack Olinger. Today, we have Philip Mangan on, and he's going to talk to us about the relationship with ourselves and how that impacts our relationships with pretty much everyone else. So I'll just go ahead and turn it over to Philip, and we'll just go from there. Thanks for being on, Philip.
Oh, no, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So I don't know if you want me to start just telling a little bit about myself.
Yeah.
I'll just do a little intro for me. Currently a health and wellness coach, big into really taking the time for yourself each and every day. Really kind of trying to harness that time for you so you can go out into the rest of the world as your best self. And I do many other things on the side. I do modeling and acting is kind of my full-time job right now, but I'm really been transitioning into the health and wellness sector. But health and wellness has been a big part of my journey, especially over the past probably about 10 years. And it's something that I've only continued to try to elevate in my life. And the more I continue to look at myself in, I guess maybe more of a constantly kind of self-evaluating as far as like, am I on track? Am I off balance? And forming that better relationship with myself has come throughout the years in doing so. And I do that actually through just a lot of the habits that I have, especially a morning routine. I do journaling every morning. And I think that's kind of helped me identify how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. Is there anything that I need to focus on today to change the direction that I'm going in, right now? So a lot of those habits that I teach others, I've really harnessed throughout the years. And a big part of my coaching isn't just helping people like lose weight. It's really just to try to be their best selves, to really try to regain control of their lives and be their most powerful self. And I believe when you are more in touch with yourself, you're able to do that. And that's why I want to talk about the relationship with yourself, because you're stuck with you. You can't get rid of yourself. And so why not enjoy your own company? And I think almost even recently, I've really kind of harnessed this self-love on a grander scale. Even though I can talk about wellness is putting, the good foods in your body and taking care of yourself, being active, etc. But also really having a good relationship with yourself is how you treat yourself, how you talk to yourself. And I saw, especially in the work that I do, I've seen a lot of, I guess, scrutinization on my own self, on the things that I've created. So I'm a perfectionist in many different ways. And you can really get to that point where you wouldn't talk that way to anyone else, but you're talking that way to you. And I don't think that is a form of self-love. So if you think about wellness as a whole and our relationships with people, maybe I can be talking to someone and they're draining me because this is just a lot of energy going on. Well, you talking negatively to yourself is the biggest strain. You're beating yourself up. We get thrown enough punches in our daily lives. So if you are beating yourself up, you're literally starting that trend to carry over into everything else into your life. And you're not going to be able to show up how you want in your relationships. So I've really taken that and that approach more so recently after the new year started, is seeing that the way I was operating, I needed to kind of switch it up a bit more and just channel a bit more ease towards myself. And, if I want love on a grander scale, I need to be that love. So, I can go much more in depth, but that's kind of just a bit about, to begin to, that's how I think about the relationship with you. It bleeds over to everything else.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. That seems to be a theme that I've run into for sure through the interviews that I've had, is that a lot of people, I think every single one of them have said that once they started to focus on how they were with themselves, when they started reflecting on who they were and like how they were being and like what was going on inside of them, that it just changed everything for them in their external relationships. I think a lot of times we're just kind of taught or modeled that or we have this expectation that if somebody else were to change, then it would be easier for us, you know what I mean? But like that one, we can't control everybody. And then secondly, like we're always the common denominator, right?
Yeah.
In all of our relationships. So it makes sense. So I think it's really cool that that you bring that up and that's where you start, for sure. Because I agree, it does bleed over to everything else, like, because like you said, you can't escape yourself. You're always with yourself. It just reminded me of a quote. I can't remember who said it, but it's like, if you're not comfortable being alone with yourself, then you're in bad company. Like,
Yeah, I like that quote. I don't know who
Yeah.
said it either, but I completely agree, because I think honestly, like when the pandemic struck, I think a lot of people were faced with facing themselves, that maybe they hadn't before. Because when the noise quiets, and a big part of like my coaching is to try to harness that ability inside yourself, and it's about slowing down and quieting the noise, so then you can actually open your mind and connect to yourself on a greater scale. And I think when everyone was forced to slow down, I was like, I'm good. I'm used to this. This is what I practice. But I think it was really tough for a lot of people, because it made them maybe hear things or see things that they hadn't seen in a while, because they were distracted from, and I think, honestly, I think a lot of relationships were either made or broken during those times, because it really made you have to focus on them.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, it seems to be something that was definitely common. I could see that too. I didn't necessarily get into like following a lot of people, but just from the energy, from what I saw, either like YouTube videos or kind of like what I saw on like passing social media, that yeah, either people like dug in and then like got closer, or like, yeah, like people's stuff came more to the surface, and it was kind of like, oh, like the shadow stuff started. It's like, what else do you do when you start to slow down? You got to start looking at these things, because that's the reality. Because otherwise, like you said, we're distracting ourselves and kind of smoothing it over, like ignoring it and not looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the following the noise, and just kind of but I think it takes some work to peel off some layers, but I think once you do the work and you practice it consistently, then it becomes easy. So I think it's just like it becomes the norm, but it's about creating the new norm for yourself. And I think it all has to start with you wanting to get real with yourself. And actually, I personally think that if I'm going to live, I want to get to know myself on the greatest scale, to where I can love myself unconditionally, no matter what, and then attract the love that I desire to me, because I am happy with who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that reminds me of thinking, you got to love all parts of yourself, like including like things like, from your past, because it's like what got you here. Because if you're still disliking or hating on something of like, we've all got stuff that we don't enjoy from our past, things we've done, choices we've made, ways we were being, that we're like, like, we probably do it now differently, but we know better now, right?
Oh
But
yeah,
like
exactly.
you can't hate on that, because like, one, that's still not self-love if you're hating, because that's who you were at the time and you're just doing the best with what you knew at the time. So you still have to have compassion for that. It's that self-love piece. And
I love that, because I actually that's like one of the Maya Angelou. She said, like, when you know better, you do better. And
right.
I totally try to harness that, because I definitely caught myself beating myself up over things of how I operated in the past. And I think a lot of people do. They hold on to, we make ourselves suffer. We don't have to. That's the best way to put it, is we have the choice not to suffer. So that's what's really holding you back from actually forming that love to yourself on that grander scale, and then being able to show up in the rest of the, your life with the love that you can give someone else because you're harnessing it. So we don't have to suffer. That's the thing. And for me personally, I thought, maybe because I acted so mindlessly before, I saw myself I think this is how I became so hard on myself, was since I acted so mindlessly for a long time, I felt like I had making up to do. And the more mindful I got, the more I channeled that perfectionist mindset of, no, like you just messed around too much. You got to try to balance that out. But I realized like that was where I was being too hard on myself, because I was making I was punishing myself for it, like for what I did in the past. And that's not a way to live. That's not the way to grow.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. That's one of the most fun and profound lessons I picked up from like the book, The Four Agreements. He talks about in the book, they talk about how, as humans, we punish ourselves, we judge ourselves like sometimes endlessly for things that we've done. And he's like, think of any other animal on the planet. They're like, oh, I made a mistake. And like, that's it. Like they learn from it and they move on. They literally just move on. But we'll like totally like beat ourselves up as many times as we see fit. And it could be endlessly. Like I know I've totally done that.
Yeah. And we tend to focus on, we tend to focus more on what's wrong than what's right. And we need to start flipping that. We need to start focusing on what we have going for us, what we know now, and move forward in that direction. Because if we hold on to what's wrong, that's going to be holding us back from moving forward.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah. Just looking at everything as an opportunity, like they're all lessons, they're all opportunities for growth. And like, that's, I think a good way to look at it too, because it's growth. Like, how is that a negative thing? Like when you're progressing, when you're choosing to move forward, in the positive direction. Cause yeah, looking back, I like the other saying, I think like the past only exists if you live there. And so, yeah. And I've done that a lot myself, and learned to let go of it and just have that personal experience of spinning my wheels and wasting a lot of time and causing a lot of unnecessary suffering just by doing that. And then, at the same time, reflecting on the past has definitely given me like some good nuggets of things of like, reflection, but the emotional piece of like beating myself up was an unnecessary factor of that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you got to find that balance of like not going too in depth with holding on to it and letting it hold you back. That's the key to life right there, is finding that kind of balance that works for you, so it doesn't put you on the other side of it. And I mean, to be honest, I just think when we're personally channeling more joy and more love into our lives, like with what we're doing, then we don't have the time to look back at the past. So the goal is to be present and to be doing what you love right now and in the moments, and being focused on that. And then you're not even worried about even the future at that time, because if you're channeling joy now, it doesn't matter when you get there to whether your goal is this or that. You're just having a good time. And I think that's the key right there, is the balance, is really channel the more joy. Actually, my word of the year this year was like rejoice, because I think that's what I wanted to channel, is just more joy into everything I do. And my decisions, most of the decisions that I've made this year on like where I'm going to live or this and that, it's like, is that going to bring me joy? Am I going to buy this thing? Is this going to bring me joy? Is this habit that I'm going to start trying to form going to be consistently feeding me joy each and every day? Because I think that's where that's relationship with you, channeling that love into you. Because if you're doing something you love and you're in that happy state, then any other added happiness that comes from a relationship, that's just added. Like I said, it's not like I need this person out here to complete me. You're good. You're great by yourself, and then you're greater with someone.
Yeah. I like that. I like that for sure. And I love having the word of the year and like questioning that. I think because it to me it speaks to like intention as well. Like you're being in the idea of being present, like in the moment. Those three things for sure really resonate with me because
Mhm.
I think it's important to be intentional, like and just being present in the moment and just being aware of kind of where you're at, both with your intention in the moment and being present. All of those things like just make really powerful creation, for your life. And I think there's a lot of times, I mean, I still do it where I get like distracted or just kind of decide I'm gonna like allow myself to focus on other things and not be so intentional and present, but at least having the awareness or the desire, the like you say, the habit to check in with that, on a consistent basis, I think is very powerful. And yeah, I think just the present in the now, because like you said, and when you're doing that, you don't have time for the past or the future. Yeah, you just
Yeah.
because now is
It's
the only thing that matters.
yeah, it's like the more time, and I mean it also is identifying what you enjoy. I think a lot of people don't take the time to um, understand themselves on a level of what they really want. I think most people are going off of what we've been told is going to bring us love or joy. That doesn't mean that's going to bring you love or joy. I think as a whole, the whole society thinks that this is the key, but that doesn't. I see a lot of things that are set out there that doesn't fit with my outlook. So I
Mhm.
think it's about taking the time to discover what you like, what brings you joy, and that all comes from taking the time to slow down, and quiet the noise. Because how can you really identify it if you don't take the time to ask yourself these tough questions and look internally? I think if you said, "Hey, what do you want? What do you really want?" That's what I ask my clients. It's the first question. What do you want? What do you really want? And why do you want it? But I
Mhm.
want you to really dive down and connect with that on a grander scale rather than just like, oh, I want to look good.
Mhm.
Is that what you really want? Or what is the factors at play here? Because I think there's usually another level to it. Why do you want that?
Mhm.
So when you can kind of use that to your advantages and see like what brings you joy and knowing how you gain fulfillment, that's really powerful. And most people don't understand that. And that's why I think uh, they're just settling for what's being told or given to them. And then maybe down the line in their life or in their relationship, they hit this aha, I'm not happy.
Mhm.
It's because they were following someone else's dream.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. That imagery brought up a lot of things for me there because I love that question. What do you want? I don't know if you've ever seen the show Ozark.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so
Love it.
yeah, I love that show too. So there's a great episode where like that's the question. That's to me that's like the main question of the show. Like, what do you want, right? And
Mhm.
it's like it's such a like seemingly simple question, but it's really profound. And I
Yep.
struggle with that too, where I'm like, yeah, like what is it that I'm really going for? Like, what do I really want? And then I think knowing the why behind it too, and like, yeah, the whole driving factor behind that desire for that want is a big piece is a big piece too, for sure. And I call that, like you said, like digging, like keep asking the question, like really connect with it. And I view that is what I would call like a part of the quote unquote the work, right? And
Mhm.
a lot of us, like you said, it's just easier to kind of follow somebody else's path or what they tell you and that kind of stuff because you had to sit down, slow down, be present with yourself, and then start asking the questions and not just like at one level. Like go ahead and just keep digging for a minute,
Mhm.
and then like really connect with that. That takes some self-reflection and time, and it takes some effort. And at the
Yeah.
same time, like the reason I think it's important, I know it's easier not to do that. I get it, but it's kind of like you get what you put in, right? So it's like no different than going to the gym or taking care of your fitness or your
Exactly.
health. And so like when you're talking about the relationship to yourself and like what do you want out of your life and like what do you want out of anything, if you're not going to put in the effort to really connect with that, then like kind of what do you expect to get? So in that way, I'm kind of like, isn't it isn't it worth it? Like, what would your life be like if you just took even a fraction of the time that you're not digging to go ahead and dig in and connect with some stuff? Yeah.
No, I love what you just said. I mean, it's a muscle.
It
It's
is.
you have to continuously. That's why I love wellness and fitness so much, because
Mhm.
you'll lose it if you stop. If
Right.
you start eating bad, if you stop being active, you'll lose it. So it really connected to me on a grander scale, because it's something that takes consistent work, and it it's easy for me now to do it.
Mhm.
So it's just, the thing is like, when I've been trying to change the words around. It's like, oh, this is the easier way. People don't want to do it. That's not the easier way. How
Right. Right.
it really is not the easier way, because you're leading yourself down a path that is going to be much harder, because you might not get what you want. So how is that easier?
Mhm.
Like, and you're not going to totally know yourself. So
Mhm.
that isn't easier. Maybe more pain and suffering is not easier.
Right.
But when you can actually can harness, your abilities and unlock things, then it becomes easier. And I think that's the thing, is we have this in our mind that it's work.
Mhm.
It is work to an extent, but it's a beneficial and fulfilling work. And we can't look we have to change the way we look at it, because if we're looking at it as like, oh, this is easier to just be mindless, yeah, maybe it is easier now. Is it going to be easier later, when
Right.
maybe, you, who knows, like, leads to a divorce or something because you're not this, or leads to you losing your job because you didn't know how to interact with your coworkers, leads to, depression. That's not ease to me.
That's true. That's a great point. There's a cost to both sides in a way, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
there's just a price. There's an energetic exchange on either side.
There's
It's
always a
just
cost.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. There's
it's
always a
always a
cost.
cost.
Yeah, and so I really like that being pointing that out, because it's like, yeah, if you go down the path of least resistance, it's not like it's going to be, like there's, yeah, like you said, it could, like all the examples you gave were beautiful, because all that stuff could definitely happen. And the thing that came up to me as well was like with habits, like it's like, what are you committed to, right? Like, what are you committed to? And that connects with your why, right? Like, why are you doing this? Like, what's the drive behind it? And it's kind of like, if you look at it as like, well, I'm committed to having to just better quality of life, honestly, like that's what it's about. Like, in that regard, it is like, it's no different than exercising or keeping that muscle. Like, I want a better quality in my relationships, I want a better quality of life with the people around me, I want a better quality of like how I'm able to just be with myself,
Mhm.
because of how it feels, or the things that I get from it, like, if I don't want to atrophy and I still want to be able to like walk around and like open up jars, like I should, be mobile. I shouldn't be like those guys in Wally and just sit there and eat and go around in floaty chairs. Like, I need to put some effort in. But yeah, just that's where my commitment comes from. So I think that's a good thing to connect with as well, as what's the commitment for the habit. And in that regard, once you find that out, then it just be like you said, it becomes easier, because then it's, while there's effort to be put in, like it actually becomes effortless, because you
Yeah.
know why you're doing it. Like, you have the drive, like the things, the ways that you want to be, like, to totally propel you for what you need to do, so yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think we also need to keep asking ourselves the question often, because it could change,
Mhm.
what we desire, what we
Mhm.
want. But I think always taking a preventative approach rather than a corrective approach is best. I always try to preach that to everyone.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean, a lot of the habits that I'm trying to prevent pain and suffering. So if you can take that into your mind, as in, this is making me good now and great later.
Mhm.
Like, that's a double win right there. If you're
Right.
thinking like, oh, and it could be as simple as one decision at a time.
Mhm.
What am I putting on my plate? How am I interacting with this person? And yeah, maybe you're not being perfect, but if you can just take it as one decision at a time, okay, well, I have another decision today. And we make thousands of decisions, all the time. So by doing that and channeling the simplicity of just is this channeling love towards myself, or is it not channeling love? And I think that's the best question you can ask yourself in almost everything you do. Is this channeling joy, love to me and trying to lead me towards what I want in a better way, becoming better, or is it not? And if we can kind of get in the habit of reminding ourselves that before we make our decisions, I think we are often, a lot of our decisions are really, we're not giving any thought to them because we can be easily influenced from our surroundings, especially when it comes to a lot of the habits we do, like whether it's what we eat, you know, partying, going out, the way we interact with our friends. We're all being influenced. But often you have to ask yourself, is this my actually, what I want? So I think that's something really to try to better engage yourself with, is being mindful of that. Is it your decision, or is it you feel like you're being swayed?
Right. Yeah, that's the other thing that came up for me too with what you said previously is like I'm big on like people's personal like authority, and like choosing what's right for them, right? And so like getting, and that does take knowing yourself and what you want and what you feel is right for you, because that could definitely run up against your friends or your parents or like other people's expectations or even like the culture that you're in, but only you are going to know like what's right for you. And yeah, just I think that's a big piece of it too, is like, is it serving you, right? Is what you're doing or what your habits are they serving you in the direction that you want to go? And I agree too that that's going to change like all the time or fairly frequently. And definitely the first piece, because I know some people may think like, well, it's kind of tough, and it's like, well, if you just start like just if you do go ahead and like just bring it into an awareness of consideration, like even if it's just like once a day, like you can just start, like you said, it's everything starts small. And there's another quote from a movie that I love, that's big things have small beginnings. That's from
I like that.
Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah.
And it's just like I always go back to the analogy of a kid, right? Like babies, they don't know what they're doing. Like they just start crawling or they start walking, and they take like one step, and like they're just smiling and cheesing, and everybody around them is totally smiling, cheesing. Like nobody's criticizing that kid for taking a first step, or like they're all very happy about it. So everything starts incrementally. And I know for myself, there's things where I would get into that perfectionism as well, and like think that I needed to know so much or like do so much before, and it would just stop me. It would stop me before I started. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
having that compassion of just like, it's okay to just how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yeah, that's I think that's what most people, especially even that, I know I suffer from getting overwhelmed, because when you have a goal in mind, there's a lot of information out there, and you look how far you are away from that goal, it can be very overwhelming to cause you to break down, and you don't even know where to start because you just are so overwhelmed, and then you don't even put forth the effort. But yeah, you have to break it down in the simplest fashion that you possibly can. And what can I do today? And like, that's why I say it's a decision at a time. What can I do today to move forward in a positive direction? And every day might not be, moving forward, but it's about finding that resilience as well, and continuing to put forth the effort, because if you know what you want and why you want it, you're holding that in front of you on the greater scale when days are tough, then that's what keeps you going. And I think that's and it all is in the practice, and it's funny. It's like, I feel like I'll get on a lot of different podcasts and I just keep saying the same thing. It's the practice, but that's what life is. It's all, we don't just kind of learn one thing and be done. It just opens the door to learning new things and continuing to grow into different stages of our lives. And it's always a practice. And if you can harness the practice that's going to make you your best self and connect with yourself in the way that is going to lead towards growth, then I highly suggest doing that.
For sure. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, just comes down to what you want, like you said, I think. Yeah. And then just committing to that. And then that's what keeps one step in front of the other, to keep
Yeah,
going down.
it's just like walking. I mean, it's like when we didn't know how to walk, we figured it out, and we have to look at it in that scale. And I think, I mean, honestly, it's really, I think the more that social media exists, and different things that we see on the news, etc., it's tough to not get overwhelmed and to find our own drive and our own path, because we are seeing we are so connected in a way to what everyone else is doing. It makes us almost feel like we're not enough if we're not doing the same things, and if we're incapable of doing it. And I don't know. I just think that that plays a real. It makes it tougher. Like when you're a baby and you're trying to learn how to walk, you're not letting that noise in. So that's why like one of the biggest things I keep saying is quieting the noise, because when you can quiet the noise and really listen to yourself, that's where you're able to build up, like, that confidence in yourself, I think, because you have to give yourself those pep talks. It's I'm happy to coach people when I do, and I am that support system for them, but I teach them the habits so they can show up for themselves. That's the thing, is I'm their support at the beginning so they gain the confidence, and then until they can start doing the habits where then they can continue on with the lasting changes. And that's the thing, though, is the noise. It's everywhere, but we have to choose to shut it off. And it's a choice. We have to remember that it's a choice. We don't have to grab our phones in the morning. We don't have to turn on the news and fill our minds with that. Like I said, I don't touch my phone for like the first hour and a half of the day. I rarely watch the news. I mean, I'm informed, but I don't live by it. And I try to balance myself out through social media, as if am I using this for good? Am I just mindlessly looking at what everyone else is doing? So you have to continue to try to, and another key term, setting boundaries. Setting boundaries with those things, setting boundaries with yourself. That plays a very important role in, the self-love, because that's what's either going to feed you more self-love, or it's going to lead you away from it, because you can get pretty down on yourself if you let that noise in.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I definitely spent a long time like getting into the noise, like back for like 4 or 5 years, and like getting deep in the news and letting all that stuff like drive me pretty crazy, like back in 2008, 9, and for a few years after that. And so I could totally relate to that, and letting that in and letting that disturb your inner peace, and having the boundaries around that. And I love the fact that you have this habit, like that you're committed to, about not touching the phone for like the first hour and a half of the day, just to like set you up for your day or whatever it is your morning routine might be. But you've developed that, and that's a healthy thing for you to do, to set the tone for your day. And then the comparison piece too, like there's another quote. I just love quotes, so I can pull these things out. Like it's the comparison is the thief of all joy, right? So it's just like that, like you said originally, is that relationship with yourself, like, because that's in relationship to everything we just spoke about, as far as like the news and like comparison and things like that, is it really just comes down to what can you really control? And it's only what is inside of you, and like it's a very small fraction of the world that you actually have any authority over or control, and most of it is inside of you.
Yeah.
So yeah, because the reason I mentioned the news too is I was so focused on the external, and I was really getting myself ate up on that for a while. And then once I started to let that go, after way too long of doing it, I was like, I can't do anything about that stuff.
Yep.
I can only control me. And once I flipped that focus, my life totally started to change. Like much more peace came into my life. Like I became much more relaxed, like, which of course impacted my relationships, like, yeah, that influenced everything. Yeah. So that spoke a lot to me when you mentioned that, because it's like, yeah, I've had some pretty direct experience with that.
Well, good. I'm glad you're able to flip it around. I think a lot of people too maybe need to hear this even more now, because of a lot of people spent a lot of time in front of the news over the past year.
Hmm.
A lot of uncertainty out there and a lot of things outside of our control. And,
Right.
we're just sitting there and feeling helpless in many different ways and then getting down on ourselves. And that obviously is, if we're down on ourselves, we're not going to be in our relationships, the way we want to be. And that just bleeds over to everything. So I think now more than ever, it's important to try to, you know,
Hmm.
grab hold of those habits. And, and I always say this, like what works for someone else might not be best for you. Like what's best for someone isn't best, necessarily what's best for you. And I think only you know what's best for you, and you have to unlock that, and you have to listen to your gut in a way, but you have to quiet the noise. And to do that, so quieting the noise at the beginning of the day is a good part of that, because I think you're starting it out in control. And that's what I really, when I work with people, I really try to get them to harness their schedule, their sleep schedule, because I think most people are just feeling out of control from everything they have on their plate. So you got a family and you got a job, you feel out of control, so you're not taking care of yourself. So the first step would be like, hey, let's switch around your schedule. Let's try to get you in a consistent sleep pattern, and then let's find some time to where you actually can do the things that are going to fulfill you, bring you joy, so that you take care of you first, and then you can go in to show up. So I think a lot of people just are out of control because of that. And the forming a schedule, that helps you regain control is probably the beginning step to really, I guess, growing. That'd be the best way to put it.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that reminds me of like I said, as I spoke about before when we started the recording, is did a lot of support for a lot of years, and that started to take its toll on me, having like all these conversations, just kind of like the anxiety of before I went into the into work, and like, who am I going to talk to today? What type of conversations am I going to have today? So I finally started to like meditate for like 15 or 20 minutes every morning
Awesome.
before I went into work, and that changed the tone for sure. Like, I mean, I might have the same kind of conversation that I had the day before. Like if somebody's not having the best day or they're irritated or whatever. But how I was able to manage myself through that and like the energy. If I didn't meditate, it was definitely worse. And if I was able to, then I was able to be a lot more peaceful, like it was more like water off my back rather than
Yeah.
like penetrating into my core. So,
No, it's good that
um,
you picked up on that too, because I think
yeah,
that's where the drive comes to keep doing the habits. Because when you can experience it and be like, wow, like
right,
this alleviated some stress or pain, and then the next day you have to remind yourself, hey, I felt pretty good from doing this. And especially when you don't want to do it. So at the beginning stages of a habit forming,
right.
it's, those things are going through your head, like, oh, I kind of want to sleep more right now. But then if you can visualize yourself, afterwards, of how you operated yesterday, it's like really kind of harnessing what you have in the piggy bank here, of like, this is the power that I just harnessed yesterday. Let me carry it over into another day. And then that's just like, you stack that from there. So I'm glad
Mhm.
that you kind of were able to like see that, because that's how you self motivate.
Right. Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, it was definitely a movement away from pain, so that was beneficial because it was like, yeah, I don't, I'm trying not to feel that, like it's my life's a lot better and when I do this and commit to that than if I
Awesome.
don't. So yeah, that's it was definitely a good motivator.
Good, good.
Yeah,
Glad, I'm happy to hear that.
yeah. Well, cool. Well, I guess we can go ahead and wrap it up. If there's anything else you wanted to mention or any other points you wanted to make, Philip.
Um, nothing really. Um, Other than just reiterating what I said. I guess the best way to put it is just, if you, the more love you channel into yourself, and I know that's a term that's easily thrown around these days, of self love, self love, self love. Treat yourself. Um, but I started looking at relationships as in, when I'm around someone that I'm dating, I treat them like, you know they're special, they're a queen, like this is an important person in my life. If you're not giving yourself that same treatment back, then there's something off there, because you should be treating yourself just that way, as if you're dating yourself. And I think that's what really the harnessing the self-love. Like, think about the way you talk to that person. Think about the things that you would do for that person. If you're not willing to do them for you, then there's something that you need to fill. You need to fill in that gap and find that, that ability to do them for yourself, because that's the true love, is when you can love yourself on that grander scale. Not just saying like, hey, yeah, you deserve it. That's the thing, is we deserve, someone said this, and I'm sure it gets thrown around as like, happiness is my birthright. It's like, we all deserve this greater happiness, and we need to treat ourselves like we are worthy of it all, because we all are. If we weren't in existence right now, we're here for a reason, whether you think it or not. So it's like, it's a miracle in itself. Then treat yourself like you're a miracle, because you are. So that in my opinion is true self-love. And that, when you can harness that, that's going to just elevate your relationships that you actually get involved with in the future.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It reminds me of like the saying, like, you can't give what you don't have, right? So
Yeah.
if you don't have it within yourself, like if you feel that you want to do that for somebody else, like, but you can't give it to yourself, then it's not really authentic. Like,
Yeah.
you're giving something other than what you think you're giving,
Yeah.
like your intentions are probably in the right place, but at the same
Mhm.
time, like, there's still, like you said, that gap. There's that void. And I just know I've operated from that place before.
Same.
And it feels different once you have fulfilled yourself. And like
Yeah.
you said earlier in the conversation, you don't need that other person, to make
Mhm.
you happy. It's not an external thing at all. Like, you're choosing because that's what you want to augment your life that way, but you don't need it. Like, it's not like oh, you're filling me up, like, because you can do that to yourself. Like, you can fill yourself up, and then you can share that. You can share the love that you have for yourself. You can share that with somebody else.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think you got to make sure your cup is full first, before
Yes.
you are able to give some out of your cup. And
Yeah.
I always think about that too, and a lot of the things I do. And obviously I'm interacting a lot with people, with trying to grow my business. And I always ask myself, am I in a state to give the love away right now? And it's really the constant checking in. It's like, if I'm not feeling that love to spread it, then I need to reevaluate why I'm not feeling that way, and try to flip it in a different direction. But I've been really, really conscious of that, as in, is my cup full right now? Can I give some out of it, and still feel the same way that I, feel right now? And the more that I harness that, the more it kind of guides me in what I need to do next to keep being able to fill that cup up. Because it can you can give a lot of yourself to, people constantly, but if you're not going back and channeling that giving back into yourself, it's going to empty out, and you're going to burn yourself out, and then it really will become inauthentic.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely love that. That you got to keep it. It's a cycle. You got to keep filling it back up.
You got to
You got to
replenish.
replenish.
Yeah, that's why I literally I write it in my journal every day. I write like word of the day, and I remember when I came across that one, the replenish, and I started writing about that, and it made me think about the interactions we have with everyone, and it can be very draining. The thing is, a lot of the times when I do the things that I enjoy doing with interacting with people, it's either one or two things. It's either lifting me up or it's draining me. And it's like, if it's draining me, it's more so probably because I'm not full enough to handle it, in like to deflect whatever it is. Usually, like, getting on here and talking to you, or someone else on a conversation, that fills my cup up, overflows it, which is awesome. But if you're not going into it in at least that something in there, to give, you have to be like really, really, I guess you have to be like, just take a step back and see if you're ready to step into this and give at least something, be able to give something without feeling worn down to the point where, you're not giving the right way.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. It's all about the self-care.
I mean, it really, honestly, it's the starting point of any relationship. So that's why, like, when I knew that you wanted to talk about relationships, that's the one thing. Like, I haven't been in a long-term relationship in like 6 years, and it's been out of choice mainly.
Yep.
And a lot of times when I do connect with someone, it is great, and I'm connecting in a way. But then, if it's not all the way there, and I see, I'm learning through, even if these relationships are short term based, that I've, just brief interactions, it's allowed me to see where I need to work on myself more, because I'm not going into these relationships in the way that, because if I go into a relationship with someone and I'm not at my best self, um, and I'm not completely aware of that, there's a good chance I might just settle, just because this person's providing me this thing right now that I'm not giving myself. And then that kind of will cause problems, because I think in the past I've done that. So I've been really much more aware of, if I'm going to invest my time and energy into someone, is it uh, aligned with where I'm trying to go right now, in the way that, as in wanting to fill my cup up on a grander scale, because I don't need it full. It can overflow it if it wants, but I don't need to, like, fill this part of me.
Hmm. Yeah, I like the awareness piece and the intentional piece of that, and just kind of being, um it's just kind of, this is self-responsibility, right? Like, where you're just taking that responsibility for yourself around that. And um yeah, I love the word management comes up, but like, it is kind of like you're managing your own energy around it, and like what you're looking to get, and like how you're showing up. Like, so it's just, to me, it's an awareness piece, um that I find to be respectful on both ends, right? Like, you're not looking to like get into something and just kind of be like,
Yeah.
oh, like, hey, like, so
No, I no,
yeah.
I totally agree. I think it's honestly, when you can be more aware with, your actions and yourself, you save the other person from potential pain. And I think that's a big part of, like, growth right there, is um if you're not being able to step up in a way where, I would call it manning up, and I would use that term, as in, you know you're basically leading someone else on because you're not in touch with who you are. That that's something that I really don't want to do to anyone. And I think when you can harness your awareness, it's easier to see that. and
Mhm.
and you're causing someone else, you're alleviating yourself from having future pain, and you're alleviating that person. So you should, it's kind of empowering to a certain way, because you think, like, wow, like, this was my choice, and you know i I stood up for, the maybe it wasn't the thing I desired most at the time, but, like, I think this is the best solution for moving forward in the future.
Mhm. Yeah, I've definitely had there's one relationship I can think of for sure where it was kind of like, yeah, I entered into it, and like, it wasn't a super long relationship, and then it was kind of like, looking back, I'm like, I see why I entered into it. It was kind of like, all right, well, that was a pattern, so like, there was this awareness piece, and I kind of was aware of it going into it, but I still let it happen. And then, like,
Yeah.
as I'm in it, I'm like, yeah, I let that happen. And so, like, just like you said, just to save people from, um, yeah, just doing our own self-awareness, and yeah, shadow type of work, and that kind of a thing, where we're
Oh, yeah,
looking at the pieces of us that, yeah, we're looking to refine. Yeah.
you don't want to. I mean, time is precious, energy is precious, and I think the more you can save yourself that, and then save others that, that's true compassion right there.
Hmm.
Because you're not. I mean, yeah, you should be, compassionate towards yourself, but when you are in that way, then you start becoming more compassionate to others, and thinking about their feelings. And I was able to really, get in touch with that, after my last relationship, my long term one. I really started really identifying that stuff. It's like, how do I want to show up for someone? And sometimes showing up for someone is telling them that you can't show up for them and being completely vulnerable and honest.
That's true. Yeah, because that takes a big piece as well, just being vulnerable, you know, because
Yeah.
that's very well, it's just in the very nature of the word, right? It puts you out there to be you know, like there's the element of risk of pain for sure, and just
Yeah.
like how people are going to perceive you or judge you on that, or what they'll say or how they'll treat that. And
Yeah.
so I think that that's where vulnerability is actually a measure of strength, because it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Mhm.
And yeah, just yeah, I just like that. I just like that piece. I like to see when guys allow themselves to be vulnerable, because I think a lot of us don't for the most part, or at least we have an aversion to it. Um, and I learned, I was, you know, fairly early on in college when I was dating she wasn't my fiance at the time, that became my wife, who's not my
Yeah.
ex-wife. But we had broken up during college and gotten back together. And I remember that time I was like, you know, I feel really vulnerable, like sharing this space and like telling you like how I feel, like what happened and like why I want to like get back together. And she confided in me that she felt vulnerable. So it was the two of us in that space being like, hey, we're both feeling the same thing. But because we did that, like that allowed us to be like, oh, okay, cool. Like, you know, we're both in the same space. Like we're kind of raw with this and like
Mhm.
vulnerable. Like there's a risk on both sides.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, but it took the courage to do that. And I just, yeah, if any guys listening out there, regardless of whatever situation it is, especially in partnerships, like if there's a time to be vulnerable, like, and you feel vulnerable, you should just take it. There's no better person to be vulnerable with than your intimate partner, regardless of the
Mhm.
outcome, because it's authentic. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, yeah. So,
I mean, I think you said it right. Like once you can be vulnerable, it opens someone else up too. So
mhm,
it, when you show your raw self, someone else is usually attracted to doing the same thing because they see that you got on that level. So the more that we can open ourselves up in that, the more we're going to create that space where it becomes more normal to share those things, because those are the being vulnerable with, especially your partner, and what you're when I was doing I think it was a couple months ago when I had like a therapy session with my therapist, and she was like, you know, have conversations about the conversations. And it was like another layer. Like, how did that conversation make you feel? How did that person make you feel when they said that? And then you tell them that. And it's like you're going down into another layer, because you don't know, like if I was interacting with you right now, I don't know, you don't know how I'm going to take that, and maybe I took this in a way. Well, we need to bring that up,
mhm,
because that's how you become more connected to your partner. That's how you become more connected to anyone, like your personal relationships, your family, etc. So it all starts with peeling off those layers and kind of like being willing, because when you think about it, your most vulnerable self is really your most powerful self, because you are being true to it. And
mhm,
the more, I mean, I think I said this earlier, it's like I want to fully live. I
mhm.
don't. I don't want to be numb to half of the things. And I think that's uh, a lot of what people are doing right now is they're just numb to it. And then maybe somewhere down the line, that's when they realize that this something's off. So like the closer you can get to the feeling now, then you unlock more feelings, and then you're actually like, wow, this isn't scary anymore. It's actually very powerful, and it's freeing. That's the best way to put it, is when you get it off your chest.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's very liberating to feel, because yeah, those feelings and emotions could definitely carry weight. And so like I agree that digging or just like keep going, like I like the idea of conversations about conversations, because that's exactly true. I remember in October, I was massively triggered, you know, and I knew when it happened, like it wasn't the person who triggered me. Like I was like, okay, it's not them. Like this is totally within me. And I spent 4 days journaling, like, and kept asking myself, like, what am I making this thing mean? And then I would ask, what am I making this thing mean? I probably filled up like almost 19 pages in a journal, like
Wow.
about like, what am I making this thing mean? And then all of a sudden, when I got to the bottom of it, I was like, oh my God, like I'm doing this. And once I had this realization, I was like, oh, it's not just this relationship I've done this in. I've done it in that relationship and that relationship and that relationship. And that's why it showed up that way. And that's why I felt that way. But I'm like, holy shit. Like, so yeah,
Yeah.
these multiple like meta layers, like there's just so much stuff that can sit that we just create these structures. And that was very heavy, like that was like to be triggered like that had so much emotional energy in it that I hadn't felt like that in years and years. And once I got through that, like I don't think I'll have to deal with that ever again, and like
Awesome.
that's like a whole God, that
Yeah.
feels great, man. Like
I say, it's it's like I said, the freeing part of it. It's a weight lifted off your shoulders, and you just and you can just be, you can allow yourself let more in. That's the
mhm,
best way to put it. Is when you let those emotions out, those powerful emotions of like being vulnerable, you can let so much more in, and that's the beauty. That's where you get that love. You're letting that love in that you couldn't before because you were holding back. And that's what I've learned is I want to let the tears out. I want to let the, all the thoughts out. It's because it's like feels good to get it out. And then it feels good letting the better stuff in that you couldn't let in before.
mhm. Yeah, I agree. And I think that's true if you could do that within a partnership and have it be like respected and like do it together, like that's a real form of intimacy,
Yeah.
allowing people to see each other that way. And it's one of the
Agree.
things, I can't think of anything that's really more intimate when you can be
Yeah.
vulnerable and see each other in your vulnerability and like work with that and not have it be judged, because it's just this, we're all processing our own stuff, and so
Hmm.
just kind of seeing it for what it is and allowing it to be and not taking things personally, which is all, I mean, it sounds good, and it's a challenge in and of itself, but like as you said, like if you're coming from that place of love, then like that's what you'll be kind of inspired to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, to me, I think it creates a
Oh,
tighter
100%.
bond. Yeah, absolutely right.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Like, I mean, that's what I desire in like a partner is like I want to be like not holding back. I want to be raw, and I want to if there's an issue, like I want to get it out there, and then like because that's gonna make it stronger.
Mhm.
Like rather than bottling it up and then it coming out at some point. Because I think when you're not letting it out, you're being resistant and you're holding this kind of thing in like in a almost a grudge way. So this thing is nagging you, it's going to
Mhm.
affect your relationship, so might as well put it out there. And then if you have someone that's aligned and wanting to do that, it's becomes amazing. And that's, I think that's the beauty of connection with relationships is there's people out there that want to do that, and but you have to be willing to do it yourself.
Right. Yeah, that's where it starts, right? Yeah, we gotta
Yeah.
we gotta be willing to do that ourselves. And then yeah, if you can find somebody else to do it with, it's just
Yeah.
that much more,
Yeah, the
much
more you
more
practice,
beautiful.
yeah, the more you practice it yourself, and just
Mhm.
getting in touch with yourself and putting your every day, and like when you go into that relationship, it's going to be easier for you to do it. So if you want to take the steps to getting into a relationship like that, it all starts with doing it for you.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% agree for sure. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed talking about this.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I did too. Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, I guess for the sake of time, we might go ahead and wrap it up. Do you have a place where people can find you or locate you, or
Uh,
website or anything? Or
yeah. I philipmangan.com is my website with my coaching stuff on it. My Instagram is philipanthonymangan.com. I do a lot of videos and informative posts on there with wellness related, self-love related, and I also offer a free 30-minute coaching call on my website, so you can book a call and offer a free ebook on how to build a healthy morning routine. So you
sweet.
can just download that, submit your email address, download it, and shows you kind of how I structured mine. And honestly, I always go back to the morning routine as the foundation. Setting your tone for your day is the one of the most important things you can do. And then you see how you set the tone for your day even at nighttime, like with your sleep routine. So it goes from the sleep routine to morning routine. And it's really just about harnessing that love and for yourself, and because you deserve quality sleep.
For sure. Yeah, I couldn't agree more that that those two routines are definitely key for setting the tone of things. Yeah. So that's
Yeah,
awesome. That's really cool that you provide that. So thanks, man.
appreciate it.
Sure. Well, thanks again for being on, Philip. I really, really, truly appreciate it, man.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
The knockout punch for this interview is going to be a little bit different, as circumstances are such that I'm unable to record a video at the moment. From this interview, we saw, as we've seen in a lot of other interviews, that our relationship with ourselves is of primary importance. Getting clear on what we want and doing inner reflection so we can know ourselves better, so that we can show up better for others in all of our relationships, is obviously paramount work. All right, that's the knockout punch for today. Thanks for joining. All right, that wraps up today's episode of The Real Zack Olinger. Thanks again for listening. If you happen to find this episode insightful or valuable, I invite you to pass it along to somebody else, because chances are, if you found it valuable, they will too. If you're on Instagram, you can find me at The Real Zack Olinger. Until next time, everybody. Thanks for listening.